welcome back. It's just a few days after the solstice, and that means it's time to prune our trees in the grocery row garden. It's also time to do a general chop and drop, as everything is kind of getting crazy in there and I can barely get through it. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to rectify that situation, because most of what's keeping me from getting through are my son's watermelon land race, but there are a lot of branches and things that we can just clean up, and I'm going to show you how we chop and drop and how we do our summer let's get it done. We don't want these trees to get too huge and too vigorous, because they will. So this dwarf mulberry, which is actually capable of getting to probably something like 12 feet, based on my previous experiences, is going to get to something like 12 feet if I don't cut it back a little bit. Now, if you cut a tree in the summer, we're right at the beginning of summer right now. If we cut it now, the tree is already fruited. It's at a very high level of vigor. It's got a lot of green growth on it. It actually sets the tree back significantly, meaning it reduces the tree's vigor. If you do this right before it wakes up in the spring, the tree goes crazy. All that sap comes up from the roots, the tree gets a good run, and it just utterly flies. And we don't actually want our trees to utterly fly. So what we do here is we shape them up in the winter to figure out what we want, what kind of general shape we want, and then we cut them again to make sure they're not pests. They don't go too far, and they don't block our rows up, because in the grocery row garden system, these trees are only 12 feet apart, and we want to be able to not only grow these trees, but grow perennial vegetables and shrubs around them. So if it comes out into the path too much and it's annoying, it gets cut. If it goes too tall where it becomes unreachable, it gets cut. This I don't really mind going sideways here, because I can bear fruit all over there this next spring and it's no problem. The rest of this stuff here, we just chop it and drop it as we can back into here. In this case, I'm chopping and dropping it around an arrow root. This next mulberry right here is getting very high over this pathway. We don't want that. I'd rather have it go sideways over the beds than over the pathway like this. So, we take it down and we drop it where we have a gap in between these cucumbers and banana and everything else. Some of these branches might be a little too big for you to drop into your pathways. You might get annoyed by walking on them, and they may be too big to throw into your beds, which is probably the case with some of these. So you could just chop them up small and throw them to your grazing animals, or put them in your compost pile, or get them really small and just spread them out over those walkways. I'm trying to figure out here. I'm talking and thinking at the same time. This is dangerous. Talking and thinking at the same time. Don't hurt yourself, Dave. So this is going to go through here. I'm going to take this off right here. And we're just kind of opening the pathways back up again. And these leaves can go down and rot down into the ground and feed the system back again and build the soil up over time. If it gets annoying, cut it off. That's annoying. So it goes like this. This way we can get through here, feed the ground at the same time. We just had a really good rain. You don't want to do this when it's really dry out if you can help it. If you can't help the rain coming in, obviously, you can just water really well and then go through and do it. But I like that. See, now it's kind of spreading sideways in a fan. I don't care if it goes to the back over there because I have kind of a wasted space over there anyways. Over here, it's getting in the way of a cassava, so I'm going to cut it right here. Once I do my big lopping, I get my little loppers, and I should really just do this, cut them all into little bits so that when they fall they make nice mulch, because otherwise I just have a bunch of sticks everywhere, and this just kind of goes back into the ground. But that may be a little fiddly for some of you. Do what you feel works for your garden, special people. This way I'm getting a little light for the cassava. Otherwise I would probably just leave that branch there. I don't really care that much if that branch is there over it, but if I get more light to the cassava, I'm actually going to get a yield on the cassava. So you just go with what is going on in your garden at the time. So there we go. We've opened up some light for this. Take a little more right here. Voila! Now this yucca plant has some good space around it. I can feed it and just chop and drop around it. There might be a virus in this particular mulberry. I'm not sure. It's been doing this weird yellow leaf thing. So just in case, before I cut the next tree with my loppers or my little hand pruners, I'm gonna go ahead and clean the blades with alcohol, just to make sure I don't spread anything to the next tree, just in case. This is just regular cane rum. You can use vodka if you want to. There's a little okra down here, so I'll cut around this little okra. It's getting way too shaded back here, and we can just mulch it very nicely. I can even throw a little cassava around it, throw a little mulch down there, get a little sunshine to come through, and feed it at the same time. There's always the possibility I could limb it up and then grow things around it, or I can simply keep it all at pickable height. Just limb it up a little bit. We'll reduce the vigor. There's no way that you're gonna have problems with a mulberry losing too much vigor, because they're very, very vigorous. Again, they just go on top of my beds. Even the napkin that I use to clean can get buried in the mulch. If I have a bare spot in the soil, I can just throw these on it. In this case, I'll put them around this little pepper plant here, which has fallen over. Maybe I'll just prop it up with some little branches to give it some extra help. And add mulch. Mulch around this little turmeric that's coming up right here. And here's a couple more okras that aren't doing very much. So I can give them their little nests of material. And just think of all the organic matter that's going to go down into the soil here and feed the worms and rot down over the next year. When you have poor sandy soil, you don't want to go throwing anything in your yard waste bins. It's ridiculous. So we're using food forest building principles here in the Grocery Road Garden, and chopping and dropping as we have opportunity. Feeding everything back, there's not a waste.
Sitting here worrying in the backseat of a car, worrying about the driver and whole
You can always drop a branch here or there any time of the year if you want to. You don't have to worry about that. Prune when you can. But just remember your two main seasons: pruning to shape in winter and to increase vigor, and pruning to reduce vigor in summer. So increase vigor, pruning right before it wakes up in the spring, middle of spring after it's fruited, has a lot of leaves on it, we cut it to reduce the vigor, drop off a lot of this greenery. It has less energy to store for later, and it's going to be a smaller tree. You can actually take trees that would normally be 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 60 feet tall, and you could keep them at head height. Or you can prune them into whatever shapes you want. Remember that you're in charge. You don't have to let that tree get to its maximum height. I've written about this in the Little Grocery Road Gardening booklet, which I'll put a link to below. But it's also in Ann Ralph's book, Grow a Little Fruit Tree, which I also highly recommend, and I'll put a link to that below as well. Also, I want to invite you to the new school community. We have a social media site and courses over there with lots of information that I don't put up here on YouTube. It's very affordable. There's a great community of gardeners going there. We do live Zoom calls and I answer questions, and we have got the 4 pieces of the Creative Food Forest the Easy Way course already up there, with 3 more installations to come. So there's a lot of exclusive content over there, and it's a good way to be off of YouTube and to have a more tight-knit community without the trolls and the bots and all that. Here you go, star fruit just falling off of this tree in abundance repeatedly, and it was not all done perfectly and planned out. We just paced out where we thought, oh, I think there's enough space there, and then after we got in kind of our little sketchy framework of canopy trees, we started filling in shrubs in between and ground covers, and we had our sweet potatoes and Mexican tree spinach and katuk and other things that were scattered through here, along with moringas and some nitrogen fixers and some nutrient accumulators like Tithonia diversifolia. And we just kind of packed all the gaps in as we had time, as we felt like doing the effort. And when we didn't have the time and the effort and some of those things died out, the trees simply continued. These are your long-term investments in the food forest. I will put a link to that below. That's our new school community. It's The Survival Gardener. You'll find it there. Catch you next time. And until then, may your thumbs always be green.